Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast, brought to you by our corporate sponsor, Darla Cashian with RBC Wealth Management. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talk with musician Tzipporah Johnson, a Minneapolis-based guitarist, educator, and singer-songwriter. We talk about her musical inspirations, teaching in a pandemic, and the J Pride Music Showcase on December 20th that Jewfolk is very proud to be co-sponsoring on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Tzipporah Johnson, welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So Tzipporah, you're a singer, songwriter here in Minneapolis. You go, I was listening to some of your stuff earlier as I was telling you, notice you go by the name, the one name, Tzipporah. I guess for starters, why that, I say the one named artist, I think like, Bono or Prince, or is there something, just the first name that, particularly stuck out for you as an artist?
Yeah, so the story of my name is actually kind of a journey. So Tzipporah is my Hebrew name. It's not the name that's on my birth certificate. My legal name is Wendy. And for a long time, I just went by my legal name as an artist. And I would say the past year, I've come to a point where I finally feel comfortable in my own skin with everything that I am as a person. And if I'm being completely honest, I never felt like a Wendy since I was in high school. I never really felt that name really fit me. And so for me, going by Tzipporah, both as an artist and also just in my everyday life, was a reclamation of sorts of a part of myself that I felt that I had been running from a really long time. And so for me, it's identifying as Tzipporah, both as an artist and as a person in my everyday life, is an act of dissimulation and decolonizing my identity as a ethnically Jewish woman by physically and, name-wise marking myself as one.
That is fascinating. And it's beautiful story also of sort of the, self-realization maybe of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to put it?
I would say so. Yeah. It was just a more accurate representation of who I am, the culture I come from, and the kind of person that I want to be.
With that realization, as you've sort of grown into going by Tzipporah, did it come with was there a certain inflection point in terms of your Judaism, or was it, or as an artist, or just, none of the above, all of the above? Was there a point that pushed you there?
I mean, so like I said, I never felt like the name Wendy really fit, since I was in high school. I would say that, with the political climate happening that we've been living through the last 4 years, and seeing other Jewish women and non-binary folks in my life also reclaiming their Hebrew names for themselves, it was, I felt empowered and inspired seeing other women and other non-binary folks like me who were reclaiming their names. And so that's, I guess, where that realization came from.
Did it feel like it helped you as an artist and a singer and songwriter to did you feel like it took you to a certain new level in terms of your music as you felt more comfortable as a individual?
Yeah, I would say so, actually. So as an artist, previously I had never, you can tell just by looking at me, I've, visibly brown skinned, I've, got the curly hair, I've, got the features. You can tell by looking at me that I'm, a Jewish woman. but it wasn't something that I really talked about much either. Well, mostly on stage, I would say it was something that I didn't really talk about much, and not something that I explicitly wrote about as an artist, because I didn't want to be known at that point as a Jewish musician. I just wanted to be a musician. And then I came to a realization that, like, no, like, these things are all a part of who I am. And even if I'm not always explicitly writing for a Jewish audience, it still influences the way that I look at music and the mission of my music. And so now I feel more comfortable incorporating Hebrew and Jewish themes, bits of Jewish folk songs into my music as a part of it, even if it's not necessarily explicitly talking about Jewish issues.
So what is the mission of your music? I don't necessarily hear, in listening and, either listening to artists that I like talk about their music. I've never heard it put that way, the mission of their music. What is the mission of your music?
So when I was growing up, I mean, I did listen to a lot of Jewish music growing up, but some of the non-Jewish artists that I listened to a lot and still listen to a lot are Bruce Springsteen and Tracy Chapman, who are both known for the ways in which they use music as a vessel for their activism, and advocating for positive social change. And that's something that I try to embody in my music as well, in the most authentic and genuine way that I can.
And I noticed that one of the last song is on Ain't No Powers. Is that your latest EP?
Yeah.
The last song on that is the cover of Rabbi Menachem Creditor's Olam Chesed Yivaneh.
Yeah.
Which is all about that mission and activism.
Yeah.
And it was, a beautiful rendition of it. Everyone, we'll have a link in the show notes. Please go listen. It's really fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. That one I didn't initially plan on including that particular song in that EP. In fact, like, it had been so long since I had heard it last time before I decided to record it that I kind of forgot it existed. And I came across a recording of it wasn't Rabbi Creditor himself. It was a duo. I can't remember the name, but mm-hmm. It was a male and a female. And they turned it into a duet, and I was just like, oh yeah, I always thought that the melody to this song was really pretty, and it fits in with the rest of the messages in my EP. So why don't I, work up a cover of this and go ahead and include it?
Well, that's great. It's a great song, and I think really does speak to the sort of activism that you look for. Now, how does your songwriting and your Judaism, how do you try to tie the intersection of the art and you as a person and the Judaism all together?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I would say that, a lot of contemporary Jewish music kind of has that activist bent anyways. And so, I don't know, including, well, even like old Jewish prayers, like if you listen to Virus, that little melody at the beginning is from Lo Yisa Goy.
Yep. Yeah, I noticed. I caught that right away. It was great.
And so, I guess I just go back, I listen to things and I think like, okay, like what prayer, what song, what melodies are gonna kind of fit with the overall message that I'm trying to get across here, in a way that you can hear that it's coming from the perspective of a Jew, I guess. Does that
No, it does. It does. How has, I mean, this has been a year. It's been a weird one. How has sort of watching things, watching what's gone on out in the world affected you positively or negatively as an artist?
Well, I would say that, it has admittedly hampered my ability to, my creative ability, when there's all this stuff going on. And I'm also somebody who has anxiety disorder and depression. I'm very open about it. And so having all these things going on does make it kind of hard to get those creative juices to flow. At the same time, this is the, I guess, most prolific I've been in terms of lyric writing, and I've only gotten more outspoken and more obnoxious in my songwriting as the year has gone on. Hopefully I'll be able to record those new songs and polish them and finalize them soon. So in a sense, I've had a lot of things to write about, even if they haven't always been positive or coming from a positive place, I suppose.
Okay. One of the things we talk about, the, I guess, inability to perform right now, at least in the sense that you would like to perform, coming up on December 20th is TCG Folk is co-sponsoring the J Pride open mic and Zoom concert Sunday afternoon, December 20th. You are performing, when you have this kind of opportunity and potentially a new audience, how do you like to, I guess, create your set list? You probably don't have that many songs that you get to play. What are you thinking about when you get ready to play something like this kind of showcase?
Well, I mean, I take into account the audience themselves. I know that I'm performing in front of an audience of other Jewish people, so that means I can spend more time just playing music and less time having to explain the cultural references. And I try to mix a good have like a good balance of original music and cover songs that are going to be crowd pleasers in my set lists. They're not always, music about activism or social change. Sometimes it's just fun music because joy is a revolutionary force and we all deserve to have a little bit of fun even in a time like this. So I would say that the creation of a set list for me is usually specific to each concert. And there are certain processes, like I make sure that certain songs, if like two songs are in the same key, I don't play them back to back and things like that. But as far as like the content or the point of a set list, that I think varies depending on the concert.
Excellent. Well, and you are performing along with Tuffy Red, Masha Trias, and Sarah Larson. We're going to have more on TCG Folk later this week about that. The show is next Sunday, December 20th, or I guess this coming Sunday, December 20th, depending on when you hear this, at 3:00 Central Time. And we'll have all the details for where to tune in to watch that. And it should be it'll be a nice outlet, I think, for people. It's been, this year's been a lot. So I think a night, from a calming, afternoon of folk music might be a nice way to sort of see out a weekend.
Yeah, I think so. It'll, if nothing else, at least give people something to look forward to, right?
I think we all need something to look forward to right now. No matter how big or small it would be nice.
Yeah, exactly.
So now one of the things I noticed on your website also is that you teach. You're teaching guitar right now. How, I guess, how different is that for you than, versus the performing versus the sort of singing, songwriting piece of what you do as an artist?
Mm-hmm. So I would say that, there are certain similarities. You have to kind of project this sort of persona when you're a teacher, kind of like you would have to do when you're a performer. But in a lot of ways, it is a very different skill set aside from that. I would say, like, when you're teaching, you have to kind of be more aware of, like, maintaining that one-on-one connection. It's different than performing in front of an audience where you're kind of like putting on an act and you yourself are the actor. When you're teaching in a one-on-one setting, you have to kind of put that impulse aside a little bit, so that you can foster a genuine connection between yourself and your student.
Interesting. So how challenging is it to try to teach guitar now in this time where it's all on Zoom and you don't sort of get the hands-on experience of being able to show close up, like where hands should go and, playing chords and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I will admit that it is harder. I can't reach over and be like, no, your hand's supposed to be like this, or let's adjust your posture so that you're sitting more upright like this. I can't do that. So I have to be better about explaining things, which is not something that has always come easily to me. I'm somebody who learns by doing, and so my teaching style is that I teach by showing. And so that is a challenge that I've had to overcome, is being able to succinctly describe what I want a student to do, as opposed to just showing them with my physical body or with my hands what I want them to be doing when they're playing their guitar.
Right. No, that makes sense. I think it's definitely going to be more challenging, and I'm sure it's one of those areas where you're looking forward to being able to be back in person with someone, with a student, or with basically anything you do as a musician. I got to imagine this is, on artists and musicians, this time has to be tougher on creative folks like yourself than almost any other. So
yeah, and what I miss most is being, in terms of teaching, what I miss most is seeing my students in person. I'm thankful that I'm still able to have video calls with them and see them on a weekly basis to see that they're okay. And I miss performing so much.
I'm sure.
I miss the stage.
I'm absolutely positive that is the case, and I know this has got to be really and it is such a bummer, I think, for people who perform and for people who like to go out to see performances. It really is such a tough time right now.
Yeah, it's a bummer too. Right when all of this hit, I had an EP release show, or a series of EP release shows, I should say, scheduled, where I was working with friends of mine who are also musicians who live out of state, and we were gonna come together and we were gonna have a show that was led entirely by women and non-binary folks, and it was gonna be awesome. And COVID was just nope, you're not gonna that's not gonna happen. So it'll be a year in January from the time that I released that EP, and I still haven't had my release show yet.
Oh no, that's going to be the weirdest release show ever. Is that You're gonna have it. It'll have been out for 12, 16 months, but whatever,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, obviously, I'm glad that we made the call to cancel those shows until further notice, because I would have felt horrible if somebody caught this because of something that I was leading and putting on. And also, it's just like not okay to be putting other people in danger either anyways. So at the end of the day, I'm glad that we made that call. It's just, it's a bummer.
For sure. Obviously, much rather be out there performing and playing shows and touring and doing all the fun part of being a musician, yeah. and rather than being cooped up like everyone else is right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tzipporah, last couple questions, and we're gonna let you go. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
I would say that my favorite Jewish holiday is Purim. I just love like the story, the festivities, the excuse to dress up and make myself look completely ridiculous and nobody can say jack about it. The food, and just like the general sense of merriment. I don't feel like we get a lot of holidays like that as Jewish people, and so having a holiday that is like specifically for like festivities and merriment because we're resilient and we're survivors is for me a very powerful thing.
No, absolutely. I think you're right. There's not as many, sort of joyous over the top celebrations like Purim can be. Mm-hmm. So it's good to celebrate those that we do. And finally, what is your favorite Jewish food?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I would say my top favorite food in terms of Jewish food is shakshuka. For me, it's a comfort food. It brings back a lot of good memories, and so I find myself making it on days when I just need a little extra pick me up, and so that's the recipe that I have is one that I find myself turning to often, especially these days.
I was gonna say it's been a year where I think we all need a little comfort.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand that. Well, Tzipporah Johnson, thank you so much for joining us. The J Pride Music Showcase on December 20th. We are looking forward to watching you and the other performers as well take part in that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.